be a long one. We're heading to Boise today, the land of trees. I think we've made the decision to skip. We're skipping the burrito today. The decision that required a lot of deliberation, but I think we have successfully determined that the family meal at a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse is going to most often beat out anything that we are offered at a Maverick. Now, could be wrong, as always. This is where I currently stand on the issue. I think that's right. 1 second. There it is. If we go there, locking it in. We're changing our drink holder location. Doing things here and there. We are engineering, folks. We are engineering it. I think we do that. It is solid. Yeah, we gotta go. One other thing before we take off. Deciding whether or not I want a cigarette. I kind of feel like a cigarette. So today, we're going to be talking a little bit about anhedonia. Anhedonia, which is, so if we talk about, if you know, you know. If you don't know, we're going to talk about it. Root words are amazing. And why are root words amazing? Because oftentimes words are used. Unbutton this. Feeling a little stuffed up. A little constricted. So root words are used in a lot of words. A lot of words that we use, as far as I know, are compound Latin words. Or let's say adaptations of Latin words, yes? Where's my... Aha! Sweet victory. I'm thinking about this. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping notes here. We could do a vlog setup with the iPad. I kind of like the idea. What we would do, I think, we would have iPad front and center stage. I think the audio on it's slightly better. The main thing is it's more dedicated, right? It's easier to load everything on. However, critical point here, the iPad doesn't have any storage, but let me run through these things one at a time. We'll get back to anhedonia and root words in a moment. So, one of the really cool things that we can do with a vlog, especially a car vlog setup, is we can connect one of our devices via USB-C to a USB hub. And I think what we could do, there's a lot of things we can talk about today. What we can do is we could take our Razer microphone, which is really, just an okay microphone if we're being honest. It's just an okay one. That's what I use for the mainstream. Now we could take that and we could repurpose it into the car. It's directional, and I think it has pretty decent noise reduction. It's going to be better than a phone microphone by a mile, I'm sure. What we have right now on this is, you know, I would say serviceable. I'm probably legible. You can probably hear a little bit of audio in the back, or a little bit of the music in the background. It's not great, you know? So that's what we're thinking there. I think it'd be good to set that up. Now, the other part is we record on the iPad with a USB-C dock, then that would mean that we could have external storage that we record to. It'd be kind of cool. I don't know if that's going to be extra steps or not. We'll see. There's an argument for just getting a camcorder too, but I think that's a little too far. I don't know how interesting I'll be able to make my life in mass, right? Oh, that's one reason. It's a tiny bit better. Imagine that, if you close the door, it gets a little quieter. So, streaming setup, that'll be the first thing that we talk about, or a vlogging setup for the car. The problem with having an interface right in front of me like this is that it covers up my speedometer, and one thing we can do to combat that is we have data plans for a couple of our devices. We could set up just a little speedometer app, especially on the iPhone. We could have that always be running. I thought about this as well. It's almost heartbreaking that we can't use the rear camera of the iPhone, because it's a pretty iPhone 12 rear camera, iPhone 12 standard rear camera, pretty solid, usable. We used it as a webcam a little bit. It looks pretty good. Then we don't have essentially a viewfinder or a preview. So I don't know if that's going to be a good option for us. So spend some time thinking about that. I mean, there's over engineering for sure. What we have now is functional enough. Even just getting the microphone in with this kind of setup seems okay. We could use the iPhone as a music controller, just use it as a stereo pretty much. I thought about that. And that would make a lot of sense as well. We'll play with it. See, these things, let's tie this back in. We're going to take a segue on over to one of our original ideas. The way we're going to do that is, why am I doing this stuff? It's kind of a weird thing, just how interested I've gotten into this. It's not like, I think people can get into being a creator of stuff in a couple different ways. I mean, one of the obvious ones is if in early success. So if a person makes a video and it not even gets viral, but is popular with their friends and they get a lot of positive feedback, I think that could be one reason to chase that high, or I guess organize those thoughts. I guess that would produce a high that could be chased. I think it's a better way to say it. So absolutely, they would have a reason to continue creating stuff to showcase. An external motivator like that. It's different for me, and to explore this a little bit, what's happening is when I'm making stuff, I feel like myself. I say this a lot. Find something that makes you feel like yourself while you're doing it. I just feel like I'm doing what a Jacob would normally do, right? And it's a little rough because a lot of this is cringy. I cringe myself on the daily when I watch this. It's why I can't edit my own shit. You know, not really. Hearing the sound of my own voice and all of the other, it's just no thank you. But I think that's why we're doing it. One of the big whys is I am siphoning joy. I am harvesting joy from this action. So long as I harvest joy from it, I'll continue doing it. As long as it doesn't hurt other people or cause other problems, there's a benefit with little cost. And the reason that's relevant is because I have been known to suffer from a condition known as anhedonia. And I think a lot of people have, right? This is not it's a very basic term. Anhedonia comes from the root words an as in like against, I think antagonist or anti, I think, unless I'm crossing streams here. Hedonia, that one's a little bit easier because we can point to the word hedonism, hedonistic treadmill, right? Hedonism, if you think of a bunch of hedonists, they're probably orgying on a bunch of drugs in the wilderness, having a grand old time. And hedonism comes from the root word of pleasure. Okay, anhedonia is the opposite of hedonism, and it means an inability to experience pleasure. Okay, so a person, you know, could be doing all of the things that give other people joy in exactly the same way, and due to a wiring fault or something or other along those lines, the pleasure chemical is not being delivered or not being interpreted correctly by the biology in the brain. That's my understanding of it. Not a biology. I'm not anything, actually. What is this? Do not enter. That's the only way to go. Construction. What are we talking about here? They have a do not enter sign pointed directly. Okay, that was insane. Very confusing. What are we gonna do? Use some common sense and keep going. So, common sense, another misnomer. Alright, so we have anhedonia. Anhedonia. And what that means is, so I think about the implications of that as like, okay, so what you're saying is I can't see a sunrise and feel a tiny glimmer of hope. That doesn't happen. We could eat ice cream and feel nothing. Well, you might be thinking, oh, that's just depression. And I think, as far as I understand, yes, anhedonia is a component of depression. Or maybe the most important component. But it's possible that in so many words, I'm just describing what depression is, and that I'm having it. Or have always had some form of it. But I think anhedonia is a little bit more specific. It's less diagnosing myself on WebMD, and more, and to be fair, I have been diagnosed with depression, but it seems a little disingenuous given that I think one of the questions was, are you feeling depressed? Sure. I have a bone to pick with the specificity of diagnoses, especially when we're dealing with something so abstract as an internal environment, like a mental or a psychic environment that a person's trying to describe, and they might not be even accurate to what they are feeling themselves. I don't know enough about it. I feel like misdiagnoses would be really difficult. If I'm in pain, me personally, if I'm in pain, I'll take any diagnosis I can get that would describe how I could escape that pain, or make things a little bit better. Use better verbiage there. If there's a problem, if my car is falling apart and not working, and I go to a mechanic and I say, hey, all these things are happening, and I'm describing a bunch of things, I don't know anything about cars. And they say, oh, it could be this, let's try and fix this first. I say, yeah, let's do it. But given that a car is a complicated piece of equipment and a brain is a much more complicated piece of equipment, it takes longer. And I think, I'm guessing the process of therapy is going in, you say, oh, I hear this bump, bump, bump when I start it up, or it goes every time, something like that. You say, oh, the mechanic might say, hey, let's fix this, see if that fixes the issue, and then you go back and forth until you've kind of centered in on what the issue is. I think that's the process of therapy, is you take things one at a time, both with behavioral and medication-based treatments and anything else. The point is, we're talking about anhedonia. Anhedonia is the inability to derive pleasure from something that, and maybe more specifically, from something that should produce pleasure. When anhedonia happens, I think, for me, given that not many things give me pleasure, the things that do give me pleasure, I tend to obsess over a little bit, sure. If nothing quenches your thirst, the thing that will, or the few things that will, tend to become more important. So, the reason that this sort of recording thing, this hobby of mine, it gives me pleasure. It does. There are some things that give me small amounts of pleasure consistently, and it's been a maturing process for me to accept that small amounts of pleasure consistently are more desirable than inconsistent high levels of pleasure. Don't get me wrong, if I'm feeling secure, I'll roll the dice on a higher level of pleasure, I'll roll the dice on a situation that could play out in either a high level of pleasure or a gigantic waste of time. But for now, I'm talking just daily things. That's why reruns are so good, right? Because reruns aren't necessarily fascinating and mind-blowing. They may not blow my hair back, but I know that I will at least get a small amount of pleasure. They're a safe bet for how to spend my time. How to spend my turn, right? We're talking about time economics, I guess we could say. It's kind of time management, it's the economics of it. We have a limited amount of time, so how we spend the time is important. We'll talk about that. Now, I think that kind of rounds out the first part of this. I think another thing that we could talk about here, one of the things I need to start working on is tonality and cadence, the art of speaking. So we take, actually this is a warm-up exercise right here. So there's an idea that in acting, or specifically like voice acting, you'll see it if you scroll through short videos long enough. You'll catch this breadcrumb that says, there are people who their entire profession is built on sounding a particular way with their voice. And the reason I think this is important is because I think while my entire career is not built around my voice, a large section of it is, especially in an initial greet, So we talked about, a while back, we talked about sort of the gamification of jobs, right? A gamification of employment, where instead of working a job and getting a paycheck, it's a quest and farming gold, and along that quest, gamifying employment makes it a lot more engaging, I think. Me personally, I'd rather be farming experience and currency than just working the same job over and over again. The experience part is important because I would say, oh shit, what are you doing? Holy moly. The way people drive fucking irritates me. Everyone in the world saying same here. So, we have a gamification of the employment process. And within that, I think farming, what I was going to say is farming currency can get old if there's no progression within the game loop, as it were, right? Or the work loop. So what can be done is to see, the mental framework of it is to see each day of work as a sort of role-playing game where you're building skills in different areas and leveling up. Now, there's no UI for this, but it's something that can be taken. A person can keep track of their skill levels in certain areas. I think it's good. I think it's important to do. I think there's different ways to explain this process that might all be valid. I just use gamification because I play video games. And I have derived pleasure from video games. So using an analogy over to something that I enjoy from something I enjoy to something that I don't seems a little valuable. Alright, so we're gamifying, and one of the things I've talked about before with serving, being a waiter, serving food specifically, is there's different kinds of challenges. You can break things apart into different areas. One of them is the charisma tree, right? All of the talking to people, being funny, being enjoyable, not being annoying, all of the charisma-based stuff, your interface with other people. And that tree is something that I feel like me personally, I don't feel the strongest in. I feel stronger in tasking areas when it comes to serving specifically. However, overall, I would say I'm better at talking to people than I am at actually doing much of anything. Except for making drinks really quickly. I seem to have a good amount of dexterity in that area. Pretty fast. When compared to the rest of my skill set. So we got speed and charisma. Those are the skills. So what we're talking about here with the charisma tree, it is, while it's in a lot of game scenarios and maybe in life as well to a certain extent, there's an idea to play to your strengths, like prioritize getting multiplicative results on the strength of a character rather than additive results covering the weaknesses of a character. I think that's important, but I think there's multiplicative benefits sometimes. There's synergies that can be found elsewhere as well. So one of the things I've been working on in the charisma tree is tonality and cadence. The art of speaking. And while I think this is covered sometimes in the training that I've encountered, like waitstaff training, it's all about like, hey, how do you talk to people? What sorts of things do you say? How do you respond? What words do you use? What's the vocabulary here? And my argument was always, I think that's important, but the most important thing to do is to be able to perform the actions, the logistics of it. I really do think that is important. More important, arguably. Especially, I would say, especially because a large component of charisma-based stuff is confidence. Now, confidence is like the mana bar for speaking, right? It's a resource that has to be built up or can be destroyed, right? So you have your confidence bar, and that can be built up by having a good lock on all of the things that need to be delivered. So the server's at a table, waiting on a table, and they have delivered everything on time, and everything's looking good. You don't really, when they say their next words, they're going to have an empowerment to them. Well, how is everything? Instead of, how is everything? If things are forgotten, and, it comes from a place of, everything looks good on my end, how are you feeling? More like an affirmation that everything looks good for you too. It comes from a position of power, of confidence, instead of a position of, apology. I know if I've forgotten like 5 things for a table and I say something, my next words are going to sound apologetic. Otherwise, it's going to sound a little delusional, yeah? Everything's gotten messed up at the table. I say, oh, hey, how folks, how was everything? How are we doing so far? They're going to look at me like I'm an asshole. And I've done that before. Instead, the best thing you can do in that situation is to say, oh, all right, folks, how's everything else going? Yeah. So if a new server lives in a permanent state of the mechanical framework of the job being busted, then they may have a confidence that's degraded for a reason that has nothing to do with their ability to be charismatic. So that's why we start there. Anyway, the point is focusing back on charisma. The art of talking. Something I've noticed at Olive Garden that I need to work on next is it's an unknown for me. I haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about. I've kind of learned everything via association. Like I say things, I read faces, and I get like a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether that was a good thing to say. But instead, and I wish I could run it back. I wish I had like the Echo time resetter. Just for 4 seconds, that'd be great. Just to see maybe limited uses per day would be fair. That'd be such a good item. To learn, like, okay, if I talk to these people with, this background and this day that they're having, there's a lot of like from one person to the next, the same thing said could have completely different results because of the massive amount of variables. But if I was able to introduce myself to a group of people like 3 or 4 times and have like everything else being the same, and the only difference would be what I said and how I said it, be an amazing learning tool. We don't have that, so instead we have to focus on some theory here, I think. And it stems from a little short post that I saw that was exploring tonality and voice. I think it was really cool because it kind of got me thinking about. It sent me on a little journey of what tonality is. So it's the difference. Tonality, I think, has to deal with the difference between, hey guys, how are you doing? And it can be subtle. It's like, hey guys, how are you doing? Hello, welcome in everyone. Hello, welcome in everyone. Hello, welcome in everyone. Hello, welcome in everyone. There's a lot of different ways to say a certain thing. And what's interesting about it is I've gone in to attempt to have a positive tonality and came off off sarcastic, you know, or any number of like mispresented tone of voice. In the video, he just walks by random people and he says, "Hey, how are you?" in like several different, subtly different ways, and he gets different results. And you know, again, it's different people having different kinds of days, and you get different results anyway. But his point is pretty good, especially when your job is introducing yourself to strangers about 20 times a day if it's a busy day. So it's something that I've overlooked, and I usually script it out anymore. I kind of script it out, and I kind of adjust the script. But tonality, and I'll notice depending on how my shift's going, I'll go from, you know, I could do happy-go-lucky, I could do serious and formal. Welcome in, folks. My name is Jacob. I will be your server. We do a tongue-in-cheek kind of formality. That one's one of my favorites. I could do a suspicious, which I think is really genuine, because you can be kind of silly suspicious, like, welcome in, how are you today? Especially with kids. Kids love it, because you know the kids are always they're always doing something shitty. They're little assholes. But we can have fun with it, knowing that they are, and kind of play a game with it, like, okay, I know what you're up to, but I'm down to clown. I'm not going to be a dick about it. There's a back and forth there. This type of stuff that I'm unpacking, like, intellectually, is stuff that I think a lot of people, like, intuitively know, but I think even if it's intuitively known, unpacking it can make it a lot more accurate. Take out some of the confusion when things that have been intuitively working for years start failing. Now we can start to look at, oh yeah, I just intuitively go with a happy-go-lucky personality. Maybe I should be more formal. Or intuitively I go for a warm personality, but sometimes that's a little bit too much, or I get taken advantage of by people who are a little bit more roguish. You know, the troublemakers. Or, you know, maybe I'm a little bit, my genuine, authentic, tell it like it is personality needs to be dialed back a little bit. So I think there's and a quick side note about this. I'm going to be saying this a lot because I do think it's quite profound to know that the persona will define persona, kind of how I'm thinking about it here in this context, in this conversation. A persona to me is a version of self that is created by the actual self, right? If we call who the person really is, who the person really is creates the mask, right? That's usually used as a negative connotation. Creates the mask that they use to interact with other people, especially strangers, right? And for me, the way I'm thinking about it lately, or what it's evolved into in my mind, is that a persona isn't necessarily a mask, because a mask has a specific, it's too specific of a metaphor, I think, for me. I think a persona is an interface. Okay? An interface is something that allows one entity to interact with another entity. Okay? A video game controller is an interface. Okay? Glasses are an interface. They're a one-way interface. It changes how the external world is presented to my eyeballs so that I can read things and see clearly. I have multiple interfaces in the car because this car operates with its own set of parameters that don't really work well via what I have to move it. That's a very, very confusing way to say it. So what we have to solve the problem of, you know, car speaks different language is I have an interface called the steering wheel, and the steering wheel interface is something that I interact with that interacts with something in between that interacts with the car to tell it to turn a certain way. So in my mind, that's what an interface is. Interface between faces, right? Or between, and faces being like a facade. It's the front, the storefront of something. So it's an exchange between two entities that allows them to interact in a way that's productive. That, to me, is what a persona is. Is when you're talking to a person, in my opinion, as far as I know, when I talk to a person, I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to their interface. And in fact, it's my interface talking to it's my people calling their people. However, the reason I think it's different than a mask is it's not necessarily opaque, because you can still maybe see the true person through the gears of the interface, right? You can still see the man behind the curtain kind of a situation. It may not necessarily be hidden. Some interfaces may have deception elements or obfuscating elements, right? Say, okay, well, I don't want people to know who I really am in this particular area, or where I'm at, what my belief system is. So there's sections of that redacted, so it's not readily available. We might have an interface that someone has where those certain things can be seen, but only with a passcode, right? See this a lot with people who have like conspiracy theory people. This might be a good example. Someone's a conspiracy theorist. They may have a section of their interface closed off, and behind that section is the true self that believes in conspiracy theories, but because they've been made fun of, they have a defense mechanism. We can view that as a little door with a passcode on it. And the passcode is if someone else says, hey, I don't know if people really could land on the moon. Have you ever looked into that? And that goes into a vocal interface onto this door that's protecting the privacy of this person. And the voice activator says, oh, pass, green light, and the door flies open, and, then the person can unleash their conspiracy personality to this other person. There's a protection there to prevent them from being made fun of. That's one example. I think that's how it works. So, coming back to why am I talking about all of this stuff? It's because I think with a persona, how a person presents themselves, the interface one uses between who they are and who another person is to interact with, that persona, that interface can be worked on without touching the core personality at all. The persona is not the personality. I think that's used as like a warning, but I think it can be looked at in a more neutral kind of way, like that's fact. The way that people carry themselves and present themselves and interact, the interface that they don in order to interact with the world or other people can be changed without changing the core personality. The reason that's important is because I think if there's not a distinct separation, a mental separation between persona and the personality, it's very easy to say, oh, they didn't like me. The amount of times I hear people say they don't like me or this person doesn't like me when it's completely inaccurate is insane. So oftentimes the person didn't like maybe an interaction or it's possible that they don't like a core component of that other person's personality, sure, but a lot of times you have person A and person B. Person A says person B doesn't like me based off of an interaction that person A person B had. Okay. Person B might not have liked the interaction as an interaction. Or they may have an image of what the personality of person A is. They may disagree with the value. And, in that case, they are in disagreement. They probably won't like each other if they saw their entire personalities. But oftentimes, I think more often, person B just might not like something that person A said. Or maybe, person A said something or did something or composed themselves in such a way that was somehow offensive to person B. It's like, okay, well, what is the problem of that? Well, technically it's traced back to the personality because the personality creates the persona, right? But really, it's a problem with the persona. And the persona can be modified. The interface, the interface can be modified so that it behaves more accurately and functionally between people. And if person A maybe updates their interface a little bit, does a little bit of work on the persona part of it, person B might have no problem with it. Right? This is what happens, I think, a lot in like loose tie relationships. So you take like a working relationship where you have loose ties, you have coworkers, you have acquaintances. And the big like-dislike is whether or not they're annoying, whether they do their job, whether, it really never touches on core personality that often. It's just about, like, how does this person affect me? Is there a positive or negative valence around the interactions that we have, or the effect that other person has on my working day, my working life, And a lot of that, some of that is based on core behavior, like if the person always shows up late. But a lot of it is like persona based, where like, do they just talk too much? Or, do they make inappropriate jokes? Are they awkward? And that part, that interface, absolutely can be worked on. Core personality can be worked on too, but I think the separation between those two is incredibly important. It allows for a lot of growth. Now, I will say this too. Working on the personality, I'll drive this home. Working on the personality is also very important. Working on yourself, right? Not just working on the interface so that you look good while doing no work on the core components that are causing problems. Seen a lot of that. But there's also the opposite, where a person really works on themselves, they make some progress, they become a better person, but they still don't have a good interface with the rest of other people, and they're wondering why don't people like me? Well, they don't not like the personality that you have. They just don't like the persona. The persona's causing problems, little glitches or awkwardness in the flow of social exchange. That would be my guess. That's how I'm looking at it. And this is a person with a broke down personality and persona. We have work. There's work to do. Yeah, the question is, do I focus my time on bettering my habits and all the things that other people don't see? Yes. Do I spend my time improving how I communicate with other people? Yes. Gotta work on both. They're two separate things. So tonality, enunciation. I think enunciation is big. That's what I wanted to touch on. When it comes to mid-shift, I'll notice, and it's hard not to, again, take it personal. It's personal. It's personal. Dealing with the persona, the interface, instead of my core personality, these issues that I'm having. Or this particular issue that I'm having, not all of them. Let me rephrase. So I'll notice a thing where my enunciation, like early on in the shift, I'll have problems problems with enunciation, and it's so embarrassing, right? Like, have you ever, everyone's flubbed up their words sometimes, and you're like, have I forgotten how to talk? I thought this was one thing that I had covered. And then there's enunciation as well. Alright, so people might mumble, and the way I know this is because I'll go through different phases, where like right now I feel like my enunciation is pretty solid. I think I have a decent amount of control over the tonality of my voice, and I am kind of throwing darts here. I'm not attempting to emulate any particular archetype of character as I run through this information, but I hopefully believe that with a combination between proper enunciation, hopefully not over enunciation, I've done that as well, but between enunciation, tonality, and cadence, a couple of fundamental things of talking, that my voice doesn't sound, it sounds clear and not annoying to listen to, right? So that being said, on shift, sometimes, and I don't even know if I can repeat it, you know, but I will become like an unenunciated mess. You know? It's almost like I'm slurring. It's kind of like the folks will come in, grab anything to drink for you, and they'll be like, what? I'm like, oh, sorry. Can I grab anything to drink for you? It's like, fuck, I can't even understand what this person's saying. You know? And it's like that I don't put enough energy into my words for them to be able to be shaped into something that's well defined. It's been happening a lot, and I think I've tried to tackle. It's interesting because I think it's a two-parter. If I am feeling a certain way, a lot of times I'll express that. I'm feeling detached, or like, let's just get through this day, I'm over it. Then it's pretty easy to hear my voice. Stop caring. I'll stop pushing as much air through my vocal cords, right? And I don't mean to like tell the world I'm done with it. I'm not trying to be, I'm not looking for someone to fix this issue or cause drama or anything. It's just I haven't been aware enough to know that that's affecting my persona as well. And the thing about it, I don't really mind too much. I can seem a little bit detached or like I've had a tough day, but I still would like to be able to be understood. So tonality and enunciation are things I want to work on. I will and have jumped from a vocal style of, "There folks, welcome in, my name is Jacob, I'll be taking care of you." I don't even know if you can hear me when I say that. To, you know, conversation will happen about Coke. Do you have Coke Zero? No. Or yeah, I have Coke Zero, I'll bring that up. And then we'll go into, it's almost using different like registers in my voice, like a chest voice and a forehead voice, I guess is what I'm trying to say. A nose voice. I can do a little nose voice, right? Any combination of those things. And so what happens is, anytime, this is crazy because I can hear myself do this, anytime I can fall back on a script that I know, I'll say it very cleanly. So I'll go from, "Hi folks, how you doing? Okay." And, you know, being like just flubbing through it, and then I'll go into, "All right folks, well, I'll give you a little bit of time to look over the menu. If you have any questions, just let me know." And I say it like I'm rapping, you know? "If you have any questions, just let me know." And everything's, it's chop, it's good, it's clean, it's like, holy shit. And I get looks from this, like, okay, this guy does know what he's doing. We can layer in the story that way as well. A lot of this is subconscious communication, you know? Because subconscious is so much faster anyway. So we're talking about enunciation, and here's the theory. Here's what I want to try. With all that in mind, I heard of it was a League of Legends caster. It might have been Freak, or it was one of those guys. And one of the things that they would do, I think they were on some kind of interview or just talking with someone online. And I love what he said. What he said, whoever was asking him questions asked this caster, like, hey, do you do anything to warm up your voice? And of course, I've never thought of this. And he's like, yeah, so this caster says, actually run through the entirety of Rap God by Eminem. Because the whole thing's like a tongue twister. It's kind of how I understood what he was saying. It's like, if I can do all of that, then I'm ready to cast. I was like, no way. And of course the guy questioned, it's like, okay, can we do it now? He's like, yeah, sure. And he goes through, and he's not being flashy about it. It's like a vocal exercise for him. You know, I'm beginning to feel like a rap god. All the people from the back to the front to the back nod, right? And I haven't practiced it. But as soon as you do that, and he tries to do it as fast as he can, you find out, you know, this is a great warm-up exercise for getting your lips and your tongue and your lungs and your larynx to all cooperate together. It's a stretching exercise. It's like jogging in the morning. It's a bit of what I'm doing right now. It's another piece of why this might be really good for me to do. Because now I feel like I can walk in and be like, hey, you know, I'm beginning to feel like a rap god. Oh shit, sorry. I meant to say, how are you? Welcome in. My name is Jacob. I'll be one of the, and I don't have any of that scripted out. But we can roll with that. I feel comfortable with that. I can talk. I'm not slurring. I'm not messing up words as much. And if I do, I can still just pick it up and keep juggling and we're fine. So, enunciation exercises, you know? The big black bug bit the big black bear, and the big black bear bled black blood. That one's a hell of a tongue twister. It's a sneaky one. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck? Woodcock? If a woodcock. Fuck. No, not the woodcock. Dang it. That's why I don't practice these in public. This is behind the persona. This will not be... Oh shit, it's not behind the persona because we're interfacing. Interesting thought. I think vlogging's kind of interesting because we're practicing like a self-referential persona. This is an interface where I'm talking to a potential audience, I suppose, but I'm also talking to myself in order to process things, you know? It's almost, there's got to be a way, what would this be? I'm trying to think. It's like a printer? We could go with a printer. So a printer prints a piece of paper. Oh no, I'm enunciating. A printer prints a piece of paper and then scans that piece of paper in order to see how it's printing. And says, okay, you know, there's a couple of pixels misaligned here. Let's print another piece of paper. And it scans again and says, okay, that's looking a little bit better. So it's that self-diagnosis of like looking at the things that you're saying. Now, I know what you're thinking. You can always hear what you're saying, but there's not a lot of times where I can speak what I'm thinking, listen to it, and wonder, oh, am I being an idiot here? You know, unless I'm venting with a friend. So, this is why I think like it's a captain's log kind of situation. I think it's very valuable. The other piece to this is maybe people would want to listen to the thoughts that I have. What's the Tim Minchin graduation speech idea where it's like, I have had people listening to me for quite a few years, and it's given me an inflated sense of self-importance. So, you know, that might be a thing. We look at those things. I think we want giving it too much processing power. I feel like he's looking at me. He's being real slow. Oh no. We're within legality, so I don't know why I worry. It's more like I haven't been pulled over since the DUI court started. I'm sure we're fine. It's just not something that I like. Be nice to have the full license back, just on a Jacob note, on a less, mining for objective truths note, and a more personal note. It'll be nice to have my license back fully. Okay, we're actually kind of right on time. Vocal exercises when singing as well. This could be incredibly valuable for servers. I think there was an idea here. There's a purpose behind this, and I think the thing that I hate seeing. All right, now I am not a delusionally hopeful person. I try not to be a cynic either. I try to achieve real pragmatism, but with extra steps, because we do go in unpragmatic ways in order to circle back around and find the thing that works in a simple way, if that makes sense. We have to get a little complicated to think outside of the box sometimes, but I always try to return back to a useful place. The point is, there was a purpose for a lot of this exploration of these ideas. And the thing that strikes me, the reason I want to share this with other people, is that I've seen it too many times, and it almost makes me feel sick. It makes me nauseous. When I encounter someone who is learning how to serve, for example, and I can tell that they feel insecure, or they take something personally that a lot of people would take personally, like, oh, that person, my interactions with tables aren't very good, I don't think people like me. I've experienced that too, right? And what it is I think we can solve that problem. A lot of times the person's personality is not to blame. Now, sometimes it is, okay? Sometimes a person's personality needs some work, okay? Don't we all? And sometimes that is the root of the issue. But sometimes someone's really, really nice and just awkward, and it's just the interface that needs a little bit of work. That's easy. You don't even need therapy to fix that. Totally doable. So I wonder if I can find little solutions or exercises for these things to improve people's confidence who absolutely deserve it. A lot of times people just have to learn these things on their own. So we've made it to work. I've got a whiz. Looking forward to family meal. I'm freaking hungry. I think this is a good series. This will be good. I'll share it with people, because you just never know. The downside of it is I'm entertaining only myself. And the upside is maybe someone gets an idea. Really, the downside is I might feel embarrassed about it. Especially thinking, why would anyone want to listen to me? And of course, the answer is, they probably don't. But, why am I making that decision? It's none of my business whether or not someone likes me or not. That's a conventional wisdom we will be tearing apart eventually. That one, and be yourself, which I think is some of the worst advice you could ever give a person. Might be a little bit dramatic, but I think it's a terrible bit of advice. Basically saying, don't develop your persona, don't develop your interface, your social interface. Just remain undeveloped, and if anyone doesn't like your raw, unfiltered self, then fuck them. What a limiting attitude. How beautiful is it that, some very, very genuine people have a highly developed interface well enough to talk to more people, and then you reach more people, and you learn more things. It's just a thing. Alright. Well, Jacob's got to go. It's been fun talking. I will be on tonight for another episode, if I feel like it. And if not, I won't be. I hope you all have a great day. Good shift. And try not to be an asshole. Or if you do, have a point. Alright. Bye.